This is the grave of Seath Mòr, and this is not a Mortsafe, or at least not one intended to deter body snatchers like those used in early 19th century cemeteries. This cage serves a different purpose. Scotland is full of legends. You can expect to hear a ghost story or two at most historic sites. On my first trip to the Doune of Rothiemurchus in the Scottish Highlands, I learnt about the fascinating and apparently cursed grave of Seath Mòr. The kirkyard where he's buried is in a bit of an obscure location, but if you want to visit, I've left a link in the description pinpointing the location of his grave. It's said that the stones placed atop his graves are cursed, and there's even been a few people that have met a grisly end. I'm not superstitious, but superstitions are often associated or linked to real events. As an anthropologist, I'm always keen to learn the story behind them. And if it's related to death and burial, I'm there. Of course, separating legends and myths from memory is never a simple task. But in this case, there are some oral traditions and historical accounts that shed some insights into the life of Seath Mòr. Seath Mòr, otherwise known as Seath Mòr Sgorfhiaclach, was a clan chief of Clan Seath. He lived in the 14th century and died around 1405. It's said that he stood over 6 feet tall and had a smile that could strike terror into foe and friend alike. Seath Mòr Sgorfhiaclach was more of a nickname, meaning Big Shaw Bucktooth or of the Scowling Face, most likely in reference to his stature and general demeanour. He was considered a great warrior, and the historical records from his time back that up. The most notable is of the Battle of North Inch, where Seath Mòr was appointed the head of the Clan Chattan, which is a kind of confederation of Highland clans. Accounts are unclear, but it's likely they were settling an ongoing feud with Clan Cameron, directed to conduct a trial by combat by the king. With King Robert III in attendance, 30 men from each side met on the land that is now North Inch Park in Perth, Scotland. It's said a bloody, murderous battle unfolded, with severed arms, severed legs, slashed and cleft bodies, left as evidence of what had happened. Of the 30 that included Seath Mòr, 19 were killed, and of the enemy, all but one. Seath Mòr walking away as victor. On his death in 1405, the great warrior was buried here in the ancestral burial grounds of Clan Seath. The weathered epitaph of his grave commemorates this battle, reading "Victor in the combat at Perth in 1306. 5 cylindrical granite homing stones were placed atop his burial as protection. It's believed they represent the 5 clan chiefs that survived the battle. It's also believed that they carry a curse. It's said that anyone who tampers with or removes these stones is visited by a Bodach, a spirit that's said to dwell in the Doune of Rothiemurchus. And for nearly 600 years, the stones sat atop the grave, no cage, but that changed in the 1980s. In the early 19th century, Scottish burial grounds were plagued by body snatchers, taking fresh corpses to sell to medical schools. Mortsafes were a kind of defence mechanism that stopped or deterred body snatchers from snatching up the fresh corpse. And if you haven't already, you can check out my video that covers those. This cage, installed in 1983, more than 100 years later, is not a Mortsafe, at least in the traditional sense. The body snatchers, or resurrectionists as they were known, would never have been interested in the remains of Seath Mòr. He died hundreds of years before their morbid crime spree. There are really 2 reasons why this metal cage was placed over his grave: to protect the stones and to protect visitors. The issue was people couldn't help but test the curse, and people died. In the early 1800s, a footman is said to have thrown one of the stones into the nearby River Spey, hoping to prove the legend of Seath Mòr was fake. 4 days later, the stone was found, returned to the grave, and the footman found drowned in the river. In the 1940s, a journalist came to look at the stones and lifted one up over his head. Later that day, he was killed in a vehicle accident. There's been other reports of people subject to mysterious illnesses and even one of a man who rearranged the stones and was found dead in the cemetery the next day. Thus, it was decided to place the iron grating over the graves for the safety of the public. Personally, I don't believe in curses, but I also wouldn't assume to know all there is about life and death, not by a long shot. What I do know is this was a real man, and these stones had symbolic meaning for the people that placed them there. And now they have modern meaning for those that visit, no different than the artifacts in a modern cemetery. They're all part of social and cultural histories, and besides, who doesn't love a good story?